All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in for this installment of the Who You Can Become Alumni Speaker Series. Happy National Transfer Student Week. This webinar features two really great alumni who were transfer students. So I will first introduce our student moderator, Christiana. Before we do get started, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask questions. We will go over those at the end, but feel free to put them in there now. And ask away. So first, Christiana, she is a humanities major with concentrations in English, religion, and history. She transferred from Tallahassee State College to Florida State in spring 2023. She joined the transfer student mentoring program after her first semester at FSU to mentor and help other transfer students smoothly transition to FSU. In this role, she has improved her communication and social skills, sharing these skills with other students. Currently, she interns at the Family and Immigration Rights Center, honing her skills and gaining hands-on experience to become a lawyer. Her ultimate goal is to attend FSU College of Law and contribute to the field of law. She is also our transfer student representative for the Undergraduate Studies Student Leadership Council. So with that, I will turn it over to her to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, JC. Moving on to the next panelists, we have Dan Berger and Greg Bottom. Dan Berger is a proud graduate of the Florida State University with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. After 2 years at Appalachian State, he transferred to Florida State University and quickly established lifelong friendship and mentors via involvement in on-campus organizations and events. Berger has over 30 years of professional experience in executive management in the financial service industry, ranging from advocating for credit unions, community banks, and various insurance companies. Recently retired as the president and CEO of the National Association of Federal Credit Union in Washington, D.C., Berger is now a strategic advisor to Circle, an investment fund focused on fintechs as well as open lending, a public company that provides technology platforms to community financial institutions. Berger can be seen commenting regularly on CNBC, Fox, CNN, Fox Business, and Bloomberg TV. He earned a master's degree from Harvard University and was an adjunct professor at George Washington University. Berger has been married for 33 years to his wife, Amy, unfortunately a Florida Gator, and his daughter, Shelby, a junior at Vanderbilt University. He currently serves as vice chairman of the board of directors of the Bonefish and Tapon Trust, a conservation organization working to protect marine habitats. Berger is the former chair of the National Board of Directors of the Florida State University Alumni Association. Moving on to the next panelist, we have Greg Bottom. Greg Bottom grew up in the Daytona Beach area and attended Daytona Beach Community College after graduating high school in 1975. He transferred to the University of Florida in the fall of 1977, but it was not a good experience for him. Greg lived alone and off campus. Although he had friends from home who had started as freshmen, they had developed relationships with others, making it difficult for him to break into those circles. Making new friends wasn't easy either. He was not doing well in his classes and became depressed. Greg withdrew from UF in the spring of 1978 and returned to Daytona, where he worked for an insurance company in the mailroom. In January 1989, Greg had the opportunity to attend Florida State University, which included a part-time job in state government. He decided to live on campus in a dorm, which is not a great fit for an upperclassman in an overcrowded dorm. Fortunately, he met another UF transfer student in the dorm, and they agreed they needed to move out. They moved to Osceola Hall together 3 days after meeting. Making friends was much easier in the dorm, and Greg was much more focused on his studies. He graduated in June 1980 with a Bachelor of Science in Management. Greg had no idea what he wanted to do for a career beyond something in management. He ended up being hired by an elevator company to do technical sales, a type of position that was unknown to him prior to interviewing and one that he was well suited for. He was able to demonstrate his leadership skills during this time and ultimately ended up in a branch management. That progression continued into regional management and then vice president at the corporate level. He took a few detours in the 2000s due to acquisitions and turnaround opportunities in another industry. Greg returned to the elevator industry in 2009 and worked in both senior P&L and staff position until retiring at the end of 2019. Okay, Greg and Dan, it's nice to meet you guys. Now let's move on to your FSU experience and story. Can you tell us about your time at FSU, specifically as a transfer student?
Sure, I'll start, Greg, if you don't mind. I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, and I went to Appalachian State, as Christiana mentioned, and I transferred. It was too cold in Boone, North Carolina for me. I needed to get back to Florida. And so I was actually going to transfer to the University of Florida. And I stopped off. I have a younger sister who was attending Florida State at the time, was also an FSU grad now. And I stopped off and saw her and fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the students. And so I applied and enrolled and transferred to Florida State. And it was great. It was the weather I was looking for. It was 50 degrees warmer, which I was grateful for. But more importantly, the students at Florida State they were so welcoming. I didn't have any problems making friends, but I was also involved in a lot of orgs that helped me with introductions to some of the other students coming in as a junior. But it was great. It was a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah. So a little bit different than Dan, and I know Christiana covered a lot in my bio. I didn't realize, Christiana, you were going to read the whole thing verbatim, so you covered some of the questions already for me, but I learned from my first transfer time that I was going to approach it a little differently. And as was mentioned, we got the idea that, I was going to live in a dorm, and it turned out that that dorm wasn't on campus, but Osceola Hall's still there. It's over on Chapel Hill. And I was lucky enough to live there close to the business school. I could get there quick and not too far from the Capitol, and I could ride my bike uphill to get there during the day, and then come home at the end of the day, could coast all the way downhill past the library. So it was a really good experience. I think it's definitely a different atmosphere than UF, and I think Dan kind of mentioned that from being from Gainesville. It was a little more freewheeling, friendly at Florida State, and it felt like home very quickly. And we'll talk, I think, a little bit later about how to get better experiences but at Osceola Hall, and it's been other places I've lived, they become kind of your insular family, your family away from home, and your support group, and going through the same thing.
I think I really agree with both of you that FSU can really be that place where, like, so for example, you're living outside of your home. FSU can be the home your second home outside of your hometown or from your family. They can, because here at FSU, there's just that big community where there's no way you actually cannot avoid it. There's a family here at FSU. And I think that's one thing the government needs to recognize in us, that we are a family. And I'm really glad that you guys were able to, find that family here at FSU. And so moving on, what was your biggest challenge? What was the biggest challenge you experienced transferring to FSU, and how were you able to navigate that?
Well, I'll go first this time, Dan. I'll go into a little more detail, but not too much about, learning after my UF experience where it was mentioned I lived alone off campus, not recommended when you're getting involved in a new place, especially these big universities. It's a long way to even get to campus. And then when you're there, it tends to be wasn't too much different than going to community college as a commuter. You're on campus, you're off campus. So at Florida State, I was determined to live what I thought on campus. And as mentioned, it's still there, Kellum Hall. They put us in a study room with 4 bunk beds, and it was it was it was comical and sad at the same time. So it was really trying to quickly act and get a good situation and not sit back and just let it happen to you. So I did get lucky and find, my best friend, and he lives in Jacksonville. He's a grad, he's a Golden Chief. And it worked out that we just hooked up and were able to leverage our ourselves and get a room at Osceola Hall together. And people thought it was funny, but I lived there until I graduated because it was too easy. We had our own cafeteria, and it was close to campus, and it worked out terrific. And I think once I learned that not let circumstances drive you, but turn them around. And that was, I learned that from my University of Florida time, and I was not going to let that happen to me this time. So that was the hard thing, and to get through that.
I think for me, the biggest challenge was paying for school and making sure I had enough funds to pay for school. Working, 2 different part-time jobs and bartending on the weekend and whatever it took to make ends meet. That was my biggest challenge. And so didn't qualify for any scholarships at the time. And so it was all put on me, because came from a, lower middle class family. And so it was, that was probably the toughest part for me, was finding the way to pay for it. Of course, it's a lot cheaper than when I went there. I could, work all summer and save up and pay, tuition for a semester by working all summer, which is much more difficult these days. So that's probably one of the reasons my wife and I endowed a scholarship at Florida State through the CARE program, because we genuinely believe students have to have the ability to be able to pay for school and have a successful college career without that kind of burden. Because she knew how tough it was for me, and if there's anything, even just a little bit that can help, get rid of that burden for students, we wanted to do it. And so, but paying for it was the hardest thing for me, Christiana.
That's it's I would say it's great to hear how you were actually able to navigate that. I feel like one way or the other, we are able to actually relate in our experience when it comes to like transferring to FSU. For me, my biggest challenge was I would just say it was just the culture. Like I had transfer shock, I would say. And it was so bad that I really got depressed. And just like you, Greg, I almost, left Florida State, but then I realized that FSU is actually home for me, because I got to actually connect more with the transfer student services, and the family that I have there it's really overwhelming. And like I said earlier, we do have a family here at FSU. And so that being my biggest challenge, the transfer shock, transferring from a very small community college, TSC, coming here to see how big the classrooms are, to see that professors are not on you the same way they are at TSC. It was very different, but thanks to the transfer student services, I was able to, like navigate through that, and I was able to overcome just the same way you guys were able to overcome. And so it's great to be able to hear that we all were able to overcome that and not let the current situation overcome us, like you said, Greg. Not letting the situation at hand rule how we move forward. And so moving forward, what is some advice you would give to transfer students who are having hard time getting to connect on campus and making their way?
Well, if I recall, and I'm sure it's the same now based on some of the students that I've been mentoring, there's a lot of organizations on campus. I mean, whether you want to do student government, you can do the Greek system, you join a sorority or fraternity. There's the economics club. There's various, the student government. You got various political parties that operate. You have environmental groups. So if there's something that you're passionate about, whether it's social justice, there's different organizations on campus. It's a wonderful way to meet people. Don't just join, network, get to know the other members of that organization on campus. Another good group is the Student Alumni Association, a wonderful organization to be part of and to be able to network and meet your fellow students. But go and seek those out. You have to, even if you're an introvert and it's uncomfortable for you to do, you have to have that discipline and force yourself to do it and go, okay, I'm going to join the economics club or the political science club or whatever it is, whatever organization that you're passionate about, and then attend the meetings and roll up your sleeves and get involved and become an officer of that organization, whatever it is. But dive into it. Don't just join. Don't just pay your $25 or whatever it is to join and move on and just put it on your resume. Get involved because it'll be a much, much more rewarding experience.
Yeah, and I'll second that. But even though I started in sales, I'm more introverted. So I have to put myself in positions where I just have to do it. And I think it's that volunteering, find an organization, but I think you said it best, just don't pay your dues, or you've got to get involved. You got to make an impact. And I find that with my volunteer opportunities after retirement and stuff, you just don't go to a meeting. You got to do stuff, be active. And then suddenly you've got a group of people around you that are similar and they're trying to do it. Everybody is, whether they're transferred into a student, started a new job, whatever, they're trying to find their way. And there's always going to be like people just like you, and you just got to find them and do it. So, and we'll talk more about it a little later, but it's my whole career I've had to put myself in, I'll say, in initially uncomfortable situations. And push through it. And then I'm always really glad after I do it. And I'm proud. I'm saying, okay, I did it. And then over time, you just gain confidence and go from there.
Yeah, one of the other organizations, Christiana, that I was involved in was intramural sports. I mean, I met so many people playing flag football and volleyball and basketball, whatever it was. But I met so many people through intramural sports. It was incredibly rewarding and fun on top of it. So it was a twofer. And so I really enjoyed that. But there's organizations, and you have to get out of your comfort zone and like Greg mentioned, and force yourself to do it and roll up your sleeves and get involved. That's the best way to network and make friends in these organizations.
Yeah, I completely agree with you all. I remember telling JC just right before we started that I'm a very shy person, and it takes a lot of courage for me to actually come out and talk to someone. But one way that I was actually like able to like get involved in campus, because I knew that I always wanted to like do something for FSU and not just be a student who just goes to class, go out of class, do homework, and submit assignment on time. I just didn't know how to until I came across the transfer student services. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I can actually be a mentor where I get to like mentor other students and help them not go through the same experience that I went through in my first semester. So yeah, it's just, I feel like for some students, it's just the act of just coming out and just, being involved that takes a lot to do. Because I remember for myself, before I got very involved on campus, I was always shy. I didn't want to be around people. But when I was it took a lot of courage for me to just be like, you know what, just do it, just try something. If you don't like it, then you don't like it, you go ahead and then you do something else. And I was saying to myself that if you feel like you've tried the whole 700 clubs here at FSU and you don't like one, maybe you should just create your own, go ahead, create your own club. And that's something that I really wanted to do before I graduate, but I'm ready in my last semester. I don't know if I'll be able to finally do it, but hopefully when I come back to FSU for my Juris Doctor, I'm able to, create a club. But, students, just go out there, just do something. If you feel like you don't like it, start your own club, Maybe other people would join your club, and from there, you're able to, be active on campus. FSU, like I've said, is a family, and there will always be people to support you.
Yeah, and the skills that you learn in being able to communicate one-on-one, or like you're doing here, Christiana, this is a great skill to be able to run a meeting of this magnitude. This is great. And so all these things build upon your skill set for when you graduate. So now you can get out of your comfort zone. You've been successful because you tried it. Look at you. You're worldwide on the web now doing this program. It's fantastic. So you're out of your comfort zone and you're forcing yourself to do it. And that's just helps build that skill set later on, as Greg and I will tell you about. You have to network. You have to get you out of that comfort zone. You have to talk to people, and you may click with them right away. You know what? It's copacetic. There's a synergy there between two of us. Hey, you want to go grab a cup of coffee or what? It's a way to continue to build upon that skill set you'll need for your professional career.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very heartwarming. Thank you so much. Okay, what was your experience like going from a transfer student to being an alumni? How's the experience for you guys?
I'll start, Greg, unless you want to
Yeah,
start.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I thought it was awesome because growing up poor, I like getting a paycheck. So getting a job and actually being able to, afford a car payment and my apartment and whatever it was, becoming an alumni was fantastic for me. It took a lot, and there's some struggles, but graduating and the value of my Florida State education, I rely on it every single day. And I still rely on the network of friends that I went to school with throughout my time at Florida State, and we're still in touch. But yeah, I thought I thought it was great. I thought my experience was good in becoming an alumni, and I highly endorse it. Graduate, get that degree. It's important to have that piece of paper, but I think it's more important while we're talking about some of this to get involved in those organizations. And most everybody will get that piece of paper that shows you got a bachelor in something, but develop that network of people because you'll rely on it throughout your career.
Yeah, so for my transition wasn't quite that even as I was so focused on my grades at U of F were so bad, I mean bad, that I was determined to, get them up. And so I did really well at Florida State grade-wise and got them up, but I just didn't think about getting a job. And growing up surfing, and listen, there was a little draw to come back home and goof around for a while. And the best experience I had was coming back to campus. I went and lived with my old roommate, who by this time lives in an apartment. And the Career Resource Center took over with me and treated me, they helped me get interviews, talked to me about, what I could do. I just knew I didn't want to do anything traditional. I wanted to do something cool. And I know, I seem old to probably a lot of people on the thing, but you'll get there, and you won't. I still think I'm 18, and I still remember those feelings of wanting to be something different. And for me, I thought elevators sounded like the coolest thing in the world, honestly. And I had no idea. They just appear in buildings. I didn't know how they get there and stuff like that. So I was very fortunate to get the support there by the Resource Center, being, 8 months out of school, and they don't care. And they would help you. I mean, I'm not looking for a job now, but I'm like call them up and say, "Hey, do you got a job for a 67-year-old?" And no, I'm teasing, but no, that was my experience, was clearing my head and then coming back and getting that support.
I feel like I cannot wait to relate to you all. Being in my last semester, I feel like I can already relate to you guys' experience of being like an alumni. I cannot wait to like just experience it. Even though I'm gonna come back to FSU for another program, I just cannot wait to not be an undergrad anymore, even though it's been very
Well, enjoy your time as an undergrad, because
Yeah.
as Greg will tell you, and I will
Mhm.
tell you, it goes by really quick. And I miss a lot of those experiences. I miss it because it was so much fun with my friends and everything. So, dive into school, enjoy your time there. It's not just all studying. So,
I wish I took this advice the last 2 years. I have just a few weeks left, but I can make use of what I have.
absolutely.
Okay, moving on to your career part and what you're doing right now. How did FSU prepare you to advance into your careers?
I think Dan kind of laid it out already. You're in situations, whether it's class, clubs, socializing with other people, developing your skills of networking. And I suspect it's more sophisticated now than maybe when I went there. Um, but I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in the Capitol, which was a whole different circumstance. And I spent a lot of time in the speaker's office because I knew the legislative aid well, and that gave me opportunities to see how government worked and outside the school. And then I had all my school activities, and I think just being in those situations, it helped me, and I gained confidence. And then you go for the next challenge, which is going to be your start of your career, and then you just leverage those. And it's just like hiring. I did a lot of recruiting and hiring college grads, no real work experience, but they have experience at school and what they're doing in their organizations, which translate directly into a real job, a paying job. So that's what I got from FSU. So
Yeah, very similar. I had a couple professors, even though I'm an economics major, I had a minor in political science. And I had a couple, and I always knew I wanted to be a lobbyist. I always knew I wanted to be working in government in the legislature. So I had two professors that encouraged me to try to get a job at the Capitol and to get an internship and everything, and really kind of pushed me and mentored me in doing that. And it really worked out. And it was one of those uh, politics, and even in business or in any career, it's still, the world still operates in a who you know kind of philosophy.
mhm.
Most jobs are about word of mouth. It's not on Indeed or on LinkedIn. Those are helpful tools, but it's usually someone goes, "Hey, there's a job opening here that I think you'd be interested in. You're going to apply," and it's going to be your networking that you do. But I had some mentors that really helped, but also just being involved and learning how to talk to people, and especially when you're in organizations and if you're an officer of a club. And Greg and I were talking about this earlier before the call started. When you're trying to herd cats with a bunch of volunteers that are on a board of an organization, you learn some serious people skills. I mean, it's a skill set that'll last you for your entire life to be able to move the ball down the field, building consensus, and to build us, to stop the arguments and stuff and move all in one direction. That's a very, very valuable skill set to have, because you'll use it in management. You'll use it even if you're just a member of a project team. To have that skill set to build consensus is going to be really powerful in your career.
Yeah, I think you actually even moved us into our next question, which was like were there any skills you learned at FSU? For me, and I haven't graduated yet, but I would say FSU really did push me is currently even pushing me to, you know, go out and get involved. And this has really like boosted my communication skills and getting to know people and getting to meet people and just building connections, like you said, you know, building connections, you never know when you're actually going to need it. So I feel like FSU has really pushed me to be more open to conversation and starting conversation, meeting new people and trying to get involved. You know, just the act of being involved is something that I would say FSU has really pushed me to do. Because look at me right now. If you had told me this last year that, you know, I'll be doing something like this, I would literally call you a liar, but I am just doing it and doing it so effortlessly. So I would say thank you to FSU for that. And yes.
Well, the resources at Florida State are even more robust than when Greg and myself were there. And I know they have a very good mentoring program. So if you don't have a mentor, they have a wonderful mentoring program, and they'll put you together with an alumnus that may be in your field of interest to talk to and be a sounding board and say, well, that'll work. Maybe you want to consider something else and trying to obtain that goal. And then to have a mentor, I've had mentors my entire career, you know, starting out at Florida State. And so if you don't have a mentor, get one, because to have a sounding board to help you, it's absolutely fantastic. The mentors, because I think I'm mentoring 3 um, students. One's not a student anymore, but 2 other students that are currently enrolled, and the other graduated. But you have a tremendous amount of resources at your fingertips at Florida State. And shame on you if you don't utilize it. It's there. You're just going to have to be brave and go do it. It's okay to ask for help. I ask for help I'm semi-retired. I ask for help all the time. It's okay. I don't have all the answers. I will tell you, I don't know. Great question, don't know, but I'll find you the answer. But I have mentors that have taught me valuable lessons throughout my career.
I can definitely relate to that being a mentor myself. I would say it's a very rewarding experience being a mentor and being someone who has also been in the position of a mentee. I would say both are really great experiences to have and very valuable experiences, like you said, to have. And usually I don't know all the answers. And I say to my mentee, like, come on, let's Google this together, you know, Google will get us the answer. And it's really rewarding seeing your mentees actually, like, you know, build themselves and they're able to be like, okay, thank you for helping me stay on track with my goals, and thank you for, you know, pushing me, you know, even though I felt like I shouldn't have joined any clubs. It's great to know that, you know, I was able to join something and, you know, see that this is something that I really love. So I would say I agree with you. It's really rewarding and it's like a very proud moment for me.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. Okay, moving on to our next question. What advice would you give current students who want to pursue careers in the same field as you?
First, Dan, if it's okay. I started in sales, and I'll just call it technical sales because this happened to be a product. It was elevators. You could do all sorts of different sales jobs. And I mentioned, you know, in one of my jobs, one of the things I had to do was I recruited at universities. So I would be at Florida State, University of Miami, and interview college kids about coming into the field. And there was a lot of misconception over what sales is. And a lot of people didn't want to give it a try because they were unfamiliar. I was unfamiliar. As I mentioned, I wanted to do something that I thought was cool. You might not think elevators is cool, but it definitely wasn't traditional. So it wasn't going to work for, Target as a management trainee or something like that. It was learning about a product. learning an industry, working with people, gaining skill sets. I didn't want to be in technical sales for my career. I liked organizing people, working towards common objectives and things like that. But that was the way to get into it. And it worked out great. So I would say if you're at all, and I mentioned I'm introverted to a certain extent, not wildly introverted, but having a product to sell with people that are going to buy something. I'm not selling, books door to door or vacuum cleaners like in the old days. They're going to buy an elevator. Why do they want my elevator versus somebody else's? And I would say, there's a lot of opportunities. I know Florida State has a fantastic sales program, sales degree, which we recruited heavily from, and you could hardly hire them. They were so sought after. And so I would say, go for a field you like. Just because it's not something you're familiar with, look at it at least. I can't tell you how many times I was disappointed because people that we thought could be a fit they went into, I'm not kidding, target management trainee program, which I thought was insane. Why would you want to do that versus learn about this? And you would be making, and forget about money, but you would be making more money anyway. So it was really interesting, but we spent years trying to change people's mind, not just us in this industry, but other industries, about the opportunities that every product you see, I'll just pick in a building, somebody sold that product, somebody designed that product, somebody installed that product, and there's a lot of opportunities. So that's what I want to add one more thing, because I think we skipped over one thing, but a lot of my success, I wasn't a typical salesperson because I wasn't a me person. It wasn't about me. A lot of salespeople, and I'll say the ones that are going to be sales for the whole life, a lot of it, if they're what's known as a producer, mean they only get paid for what they sell. That was not the type of business I was in. But the one thing that led to my success was I was always willing to say yes. I said yes to doing things. I said yes to transfers, even lateral, because the company needed something. And I was fortunate to have a spouse and, of course, little kids, and they don't get a say at the time when they're that little, but that would say, whatever you want to do, we'll do it. So I have adult children that are in professional careers, and I've always talked to them about it's not always easy to say yes. And you might have to move to, I'm going to pick some place, I don't want to offend anybody, Topeka, Kansas. But if it's a good career development move, it might be the right move for you. And it's to put yourself in a position that's not comfortable. I did turnaround situations that were not comfortable. So I would say yes to opportunities, and especially when you're young. It's no better time to say yes and take a chance.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, for me, for my field, I always knew I wanted to be a lobbyist. I was a political junkie my entire career. Loved politics, worked on campaigns in high school, worked on campaigns while I was at Florida State. And so it's one of those things in politics, it's truly a who you know business. And it's everybody knows, Greg talked about knowing the legislative aid and everything. It's so crucial to be able to network. And that was the skill set that I think I learned the most at Florida State was how to network and get along with people and be able to talk to them about issues and things like that, and continue to develop that network. So by the time I graduated from Florida State, I already knew half the legislators in the Florida legislature. And so I became a lobbyist straight out of school, because most of them become legislative aides and they kind of work their way up through the system, and then they kick out and become a lobbyist, and then they lobby the people they used to work with in the Florida legislature or in the US Congress. But it was all who you know. Same with when I became chief of staff in Washington, D.C., it was the same thing. And it was just who you know. When opportunity, someone came calling, hey, I need a chief of staff that I can trust. We come up to D.C. for a little bit. It ended up being a 30-year career in Washington, D.C. Moving from beautiful Sarasota to Washington, D.C., my wife was not too pleased about that. But it turned out to be a very good career move. To Greg's point, we both thought it was going to be a short-term stint in Washington, a couple of years maybe. And then we moved back to Florida, and it just one opportunity came after another. But I took my networking very seriously at every position I was at. I relied heavily on mentors. They say, "Hey, what do you think about this position? I want this position. How do you think I can get there?" And my mentors gave me a pretty clear roadmap and what worked for them. And I sought out mentors that were in the positions that I eventually would like to have. And then they would say, hey, this didn't work for me. I tried. It took me 15 years to get where I am. I suggest doing X, Y, Z. But it just network. It's such a powerful tool. And I know it's uncomfortable. Everybody, especially your age, I got a daughter your age, and they're buried in her phone. And it's hard to network if you got your face buried in your phone. So put your phone down, talk person to person. Snap is not networking. Okay, that's not. Instagram is not networking. Yeah, there's a component to it, but showing the picture in your bikini is not networking. And so it's just be able to network and take that part seriously, because it will really, really help you in the long term and network. You have the information for Greg and myself. If you want to reach out to me, please do. I'm part of the mentoring program at Florida State. And if I can be of help to anyone on this call, send me an email. I'll be glad to talk to you. And so, but reach out. You have 430,000 alumni across the world. If you don't tap into that, shame on you, because it'll help you. Now, I'll give you an example. When I was CEO of the National Trade Association in DC, I hired people from Florida State. We'd had an opening for, a VP of communications. I'm not going to say discriminated because she was highly qualified, but she went to Florida State. And so she may have gotten a longer look than some of the others. And she was fantastic. I mean, she helped. When she left me, she took Robinhood public. She had some wonderful career moves since leaving, Tallahassee. But if you don't rely on this vast alumni network, that's the reason I think it's so important to get involved in the Student Alumni Association, because you'll meet all those folks. And when they come to town, and then they all want to help.
Yes, thank you so much for that great advice. Like, I feel like me myself, I am really like taking a lot of like things home today, because it's just very powerful advice for every one of us. So thank you for that, Dan and Greg. Okay, moving on to your alumni experiences. Dan, can you tell us about the Alumni Association Board of Directors and your experience serving on the board?
Yes, the former president, John Thrasher, who was actually a prior legislator, was a friend of mine, and he goes, "Hey, there's openings on the board. We would like you to consider it." And so, because of the networking I had done, I said, "Sure, I'll apply." And I applied and ran, and fortunately got it. But it was an incredibly rewarding experience. The staff, Julie, and everybody at the Alumni Association are absolutely fantastic. We have one of the strongest alumni associations in the country and growing. And to be part of that and to give back to the university that I absolutely love and that I give a lot of credit to the success I had in my career is to Florida State. And to be able to give back in a small way was extremely rewarding. But for me, Julie and everybody exposes you to the other parts of the university. You get to understand what the boosters do, the foundation. She brought in guest speakers all the time to talk about different aspects of the university. So you get to see the internal workings of your university. So when you're an alumnus, I encourage you to run for the board, because it is an extremely rewarding experience to give back to your university.
That's beautiful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Um, Greg, you're a longstanding supporter of undergraduate studies. Can you speak to what drives you to support these important programs?
Yeah. So, and I think Dan's involved a little bit too, is that, I grew up with parents that were teachers, didn't have a lot of experience with anything else. And I was fortunate in my career. We did well. We were able to, I considered retiring at 62 was nice financially. We were set, and my wife and I wanted to contribute to FSU based on my experience there. Uh, and we talked to the foundation and development and found out about this program. And specifically, I wanted to support first time college students that nobody in their family had ever gone to college. And I felt like that was something that they might be, and I was told that was underserved with scholarship money and stuff like that. So we set up the first of probably multiple um, types of scholarships to help people, but we thought it was important, and Dan really mentioned it early on about giving back and supporting students. It's expensive going to school now. I'm a little ahead of Dan, and it was not expensive when I went to school, and I think that's an ongoing. We can debate that on another thing about the high cost of university tuition, and but for us, we wanted to contribute, and that was the way we did. And so I've talked to some of the students that did it, and I get reports. So it's nice to see what they're doing, and hopefully, in the future can make a bigger impact.
Oh, I was muted again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that again. And thank you to Dan and Greg also for sharing that and being involved on campus. And so this question is for both of you. What is the driving factor that keeps you wanting to stay engaged with FSU as an alumni?
Well, I think we kind of both touched on it already. I literally attribute much of my success to what I learned at Florida State. My degree in economics, the people that I met and mentored me, professors that helped me and pushed me. I had some professors, I needed some pushing, and I made good grades, but I needed better grades, and they would push me. But also to push to network and get involved in the politics and go see the right people. But it helped me get into grad school. I mean, my education at Florida State helped me get into grad school. It wouldn't have happened without an economics degree from Florida State. And so my love for FSU, and I was there during the Bobby Bowden years in football, and so I was always passionate about the athletic program as well. But it was the academic program that keeps me coming back. And just like Greg, when we did our scholarship for the CARE program, it's the same thing. It's a small way to give back to the university that, quite frankly, did a lot for me. And we love it. We're engaged, and we come back to Tallahassee on occasion. And so, no, I encourage everybody, when you graduate, stay involved in university. It's really rewarding.
I think it's early on, like the owners of the elevator company were big boosters. I mean, the foundation boosters that added on the wrapping in the first 400, whatever that thing was called, Dan. What was that called? The little seats up top, the skybox,
The
the
skyboxes.
400s. Yeah. So, in the first couple of decades, we organized at the company about, how many golden chiefs could we get and stuff like that. So a lot of my activities all revolved around Seminole boosters with Andy and, going there and doing stuff and things like that. And over time, it's kind of like Dave said, I've kind of transitioned to wanting to support the university overall. I'm really think as I get older, I'm less interested in the athletic endeavors of the university. I still follow them all, and but I'm less emotionally involved and more interested in the school overall and in the well-being of that school, because it meant, just like dance, to me it meant the world. I mean, you know, I remember, it's vivid, our memories there, and you think, God, these guys are old. I remember vividly where I'm walking, what I saw, and when I go back, of course, some things are different, and you know, my memories don't jive with because the roads changed and things like that. But it's really, you know, transitioning now, finding another way, because I'm kind of out of the old way. And I shared that, you know, retiring and then COVID hitting was not the ideal timing of the world. But things happen and you roll with the punches. But I think the saddest thing I have and is none of my kids went to Florida State, and I had one tour there, and she elected to go to another university and in the South, but nowhere near Florida, and so that's the sad thing. So now I'm working on my grandsons to see if we get them lined up. I'm determined to have at least one of those two boys, two grandsons right now, so far, go to Florida State. So
Yeah, we try to get, I try to get my daughter to go to Florida State, and that didn't work, but at least she didn't become a Florida Gator. So that was
yeah,
a win.
that's a
So
win.
that's
So
a win. So, you know, but she was not allowed to go to University of Miami. That was off. Under no circumstances
no,
were any of my money going
that's
where
a
our
hard
money was
no.
going to go to
For
Miami.
those of us of longer time, at University of Miami is like the nastiest word you could say.
Oh,
I don't know if that still holds true, but from
it
my
does.
generation, it's like, no, no, don't do the upside down M, or no, no, no. Yeah, no, can't do it. No, it's like, oh no.
No, Greg, I like to think that I'm not as invested in the athletics, but I'm just as passionate and happy and angry and sad as I was when I'm 21 years old and watching the various athletic programs and stuff.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be, but I am. I'm 58 years old, and you think I'd be more mature than that, and I'm not. I'm just not. And so I try to be, even my wife's an avid Florida Gator and very passionate about it. We don't watch the game together when they play, and so that's how passionate we are about our individual programs. But no, I think that to Greg's point, it's the memories and the things that you did walking across campus. My fraternity brothers throwing me in the fountain at Westcott. I think they shun that these days. But I mean, I got memories all across that campus, and they always flood back. I come visit, or I see photos and some of the alumni publications, and there's a lot of very fond memories. And I think I wanted to stay connected because of those memories.
Yeah, they just got to stop tearing down some of our places that surrounded campus.
Right?
Like the First, I go by there. Where's the First? It's gone. Oh, that's sad. So,
And they got rid of all the cruddy dorms too.
yeah,
These students don't know the struggle. No,
no,
you got to go with no AC, you
yeah,
know, and plumbing that works every other day. Come on, you got to
yeah.
struggle a little bit when you're a student.
I want to add one thing that I skipped over, and one of my best times was a summer living in town, going to school in a summer session. And because a lot of people there didn't know anybody. I mean, their friends left. And so a lot of people were looking, and I made some great friends just during the summer that kept going even after graduation. I mean, people don't know, we had a on-campus swimming pool, you know, that right by the business school. So you could hop in the pool, I'd go to class, you know, with bathing suit shorts on with a towel. So I would really, when you think about it, it's such a great memory of that place, and everybody's making new memories now. So, and then when you go back in 40 years, you'll say, oh, what the heck, you know? So
That's beautiful to hear all these funny jokes and funny memories. It's really beautiful to hear. Um, JC, I would love for you to ask me this question once I become an alumni, because I would love to come back to this question. And I would love to, be able to recount on my funny memories here at FSU and, be able to motivate students also. But that is all the prepared questions for the panelists. Now we would open it up to the audience. Thank you.
Perfect. And we did have a couple questions come in. So first, you both touched on being mentors, but is there any mentors that you had when you were on campus that really made a difference in your lives?
Yes, I had a mentor on campus that was one of my political science. I had two political science professors that were, they're no longer at Florida State. Retired many years ago, but they were my mentors. I made a concerted effort to get to know my, especially in the political science professors, because they had ties to the Florida legislature, and then they knew people, and some of the most powerful people in the state are Florida State graduates, and they work in the Capitol, and they're always recruiting folks. And the first place they go is talk to the dean or the professors that they may have had at Florida State, and they stay connected to the university. And these lobbyists are and lobbying firms are pretty loyal to Florida State, and they try to recruit like-minded Florida State grads. So I would get to know your professors, and not just go in the class and stuff. Get to know your professors, because they'll be helpful. They'll be helpful for letters of recommendation for a job, letter of recommendation for grad school, things like that. So you need to know your professors. And again, it's all part of what Greg and I were talking about. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, you have to network. You have to get out of your comfort zone and network folks that are around you, and it will really help you further down in your career.
My experience was a little different in that I spent so much time in the Capitol. That's where most of my mentoring was done by Speaker of the House a little bit, but more a couple representatives and the legislative aides who you'd spend a lot of time with, the staff. And they were always anxious to help and answer questions and things like that. My career was supposed to go towards insurance, but I didn't talk about it, but I just couldn't see sitting in an office doing underwriting. I just, no, that is not going to work for me. And but at the time it was, I got a lot of great counseling from that side. So your experience, I think, is what you make of it. Take your opportunities, like Dan said. Again, it's a whole different world there now. And, we all had our favorite professors and stuff you could talk to, but I spent most of my question and asking for advice at the Capitol for me.
You should have become an insurance lobbyist.
Yeah, no, I did. As I know now, I would have been a pretty good commercial insurance person. But at the time, when you're young, it just sounded, because I interviewed in Atlanta, and it's like, oh no, I cannot sit in a suburban office for reviewing policy information for 40 hours. It sounded horrible. and it would have been, I think. I think going out would do it, but to learn it, spending time doing that was like not going to happen. Ugh.
Perfect. Thank you both.